welcome back to the third episode of the Transformed podcast. My name is Luke Broyles, and I'm here with an old friend of mine, Steve Rennick. I invited Steve on here because I have seen that he's been involved in a lot of work. He's here in the United States, but he is helping with the situation in Ukraine and the surrounding areas with individuals escaping the crisis that's going on there. And so, Steve, thank you for having this conversation with me. We were just talking before we started recording about the situation a little bit, and I would love to hear what's going on. What is the news not necessarily portraying to us that maybe we should be aware of? I would especially love to hear about the average person and what they're going through, because often we hear about the military or the politicians, but not the average person. And then what God is doing in this crisis for his own glory. And so I would love to have conversation, all these things. But for anything else, thanks, Steve, for joining me. It's great.
Well, Luke, any excuse to be with you is a good thing, even if it's on Zoom. So happy to be here. Thank you for the invitation.
Yeah. Thank you. So how about let's get right to it then. What would you like to share? I've seen some pictures. You've sent me some pictures and videos, and I took a look at those. But what exactly does the situation look like on the ground that we may not be seeing?
Yeah, well, it's desperate. What the news is reporting is accurate in the sense of it is an invasion. We're 36 days as of today into a war that's being waged by the second largest military, second most powerful military in the world against a relatively, by comparison, small country and small military. What has shocked the world is the fact that the Ukraine continues to exist, to resist, and to exert itself on its own land, which is amazing. Our connection is not in the war and all of that. Our connection is specific to the Church of God in the Ukraine. Before the war, we had 11 sister congregations in the Ukraine. And as the war broke out and as the invasion took place, I reached out to my counterparts in the Church of God in Germany and said, hey, what are you guys doing? I mean, I know the German church. I've been teaching in our seminary in Fritzlar, Germany for 24 years, adjunct, so I know them and know them well. And it was no surprise to me, they were already involved before the invasion took place. I mean, it's not really that far. You know, for us, it all feels like the other side of the world, but they're on the same continent. For if listeners are in Indiana, it's kind of like if you think of Indianapolis or Indiana as Germany, and the war is in the state of Virginia. I mean, it's not really that far away. And there are, it's contiguous road systems in Europe, so it's actually fairly close. They were already involved. And I asked, how can we help? And the word from our counterparts, the pastors of the Ukraine, who, by the way, all stayed, could have escaped, could have left, all of them stayed. They opened their buildings as transit points, and their 5 words in English, translated into English, are, please help us help everyone. So it's very much a Matthew chapter 25. I was hungry and you fed me. I was naked and you clothed me. I was sick and you cared for me. That's what the churches in the Ukraine are doing. And the German church, this is really amazing to me. And this is what really caught me, is literally on Sunday mornings across Germany, they ask for volunteers. Who has a vehicle that they can loan this week? And who's available that could drive to the Ukraine and back this week? And so literally everyday people, I mean, you can't get more Uncle Joe than this, are saying, you can use my work van. We've got a station wagon that'll hold a lot of stuff. And other people saying, I'll arrange for a couple days off and I'll drive. And so what's happening is that we're buying supplies, so medicine, food, and necessities in Germany where prices are stable, filling up vehicles with volunteer vehicles and volunteer drivers, driving it across Germany through Poland. We're not buying anything in Poland except fuel when we have to, because they have 2 million refugees. So the prices are all jacked up. Everything's crazy. And into the Ukraine where you can't get anything right now. And going to our congregations there, literally offloading the supplies at the congregation. So medicine, food, whatever the necessities are, whatever the pastors say, this is what our current need is. And then after the vehicles are open, they put internally displaced people, i.e. future refugees, they fill up the vehicles, drive them west to the Polish border so they can start the UN process to process and become refugees. And so what we're a part of is buying the fuel for the vehicles, buying the medicine, buying the food, and whatever other necessities that are needed. And filling up the vehicles, sending it across, offloading those vehicles of the supplies, filling them up with people who are trying to get out, and taking them to the border so that they can begin the legal process. When I heard that story, I mean, my first reaction, Luke, it was March 6th. It was a Sunday morning. Yeah. I was preparing to preach. I was literally in a prayer room, and I'm writing back and forth on Facebook Messenger with my counterparts in Germany because it's the afternoon there, but it's pre-service time where I'm at. And I thought, when I got the story, I thought, I want to go. Like, you know me. Like, I want to go. I want to drive one of those vehicles. I want to do this. And with my hands on my laptop, I had this sense. Now, I'm not claiming some voice. I'm just saying I had a sense to me that said, Steve, you can do this. And that's when I put a post together and put it on Facebook, my first post about this, and I had no idea what would happen. I've never been a viral sensation, but it had 119 shares. I had 2 local TV stations contact me, and we've done local broadcasts of news about, you know, what local people are trying to do. And so we've kept that up now for 3.5 weeks. And we say to everybody, it's a simple response. What can I do? Everybody wants to know, what can I do? It's 2 things right now. Everybody can pray, and nearly everybody can give. And so we're asking everybody to pray, and pray very specifically. And we're asking everybody to give that can possibly give. Everything that we receive here at Colorado Conference of the Church of God, we send 100% to our counterparts in the German Church of God. We pay for the international wire transfer. We pay the exchange rate to turn it into euros. We're covering the overhead ourselves so that the gift can go 100% to Germany, from Germany through Poland to Ukraine. That's what we're doing.
That's really amazing. I knew, for those listening, I knew virtually none of that background. I knew you were involved, but I didn't know how you got involved. That's really incredible. So if I'm hearing you right, basically what it sounds like that you and the Church of God in Germany basically are doing is that as soon as the crisis hit, they went to God first. They went Christ first. And as you said, pray and give. And their form of giving is basically taking or using their resources to their advantage, and that they had stable prices and everything was still cheap in Germany. And so it sounds like it's like a grassroots movement where people are going in with supplies and going out with people.
You can't get more local and more grassroots than a hillbilly that's displaced in the Colorado helping counterparts in Germany to do this. I mean, this is all everyday people. This is all very local. In fact, my next post is going to be about local people helping local people to help local people.
I love that.
Churches to help local churches to help local church. I mean, that's really what we're doing. There's no hierarchy. There's no, it's just the fact that they've got a supply chain and a set of contacts that the Germans trust in the Ukraine. I don't know the Ukrainian side. I know the German side. I've been teaching adjunct at their seminary for 24 years. So I know them and know them well. And in fact, the lady who is the director of global relations is a former student of mine. So like, I know her. She did one of her internships in Indianapolis at a certain congregation where I used to pastor, and actually lived in our basement. I mean, like, I really know these people, and I trust them. And so when they say, this is what we're doing, I say, what can I do? And the answer is pray. Pray very specifically. Pray for peace. Pray for the war to stop. Pray for your enemies, Jesus says. Love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you. I can't imagine a more overt persecution than what's going on. So we pray. I pray daily for Vladimir Putin and for the decision makers in Russia to stop this senseless war. And that if Putin's heart will not shift and if he will not change, then I ask the Lord to stop him, for the war to stop. And if he won't stop it, then Lord, stop him.
Yeah, it's as simple as that.
And then encouraging people to give. And it's really been amazing to me. We've received funds from 4 continents and 21 different states. That's the weird thing of social media.
From just a grassroots movement of
well, it's a set of lifetime
of
relationships. For me, it's a set of lifetime relationships. 40 years of ministry, and and it's been amazing things. Like I received some support. I received a check to send on from a kid that 40 years ago was in my first youth group. Now, how cool is that? And just this week, I received a check from a lady that, when I was her pastor, I buried her husband, and she wrote me a very nice letter and had this check in it. And my eyes wet up, because as I held that check, I said to the person who was with me, "This is the widow's mite. Like, I know this widow, she can't afford this, and she's saying, I trust you, and you will make sure people get help. So here." And talking about feeling like sacred, like something's just sacred. Yeah. Now, there's a second side to that, which is the refugees that are now coming into Poland and Germany. We've settled 22 refugees at our seminary, living on campus with the students in Germany. And so it's 2 sets of parents, 4 adults with extended families. So there's 18 children and 4 adults. That's a handful. And, some of the stories are very sad. Some of the children are their biological children, and some are their nieces and nephews, and some are, if you're getting out, take my child with you. I mean, that's heartbreaking stories. And so we're working directly with our seminary in Germany, and we just said to them, if you're taking care of refugees, let us take care of you. Like what do you need? So the first thing that we bought for the situation was a washing machine. So I have a picture.
Oh, that's funny. That's not the first thing I would have pictured come to mind.
18
is what you
children, 18 children.
Yes.
And so the first thing we did is we made sure they had the funds for a washing machine. And one of the pictures that I sent to you are the 2 dads offloading a washing machine out of the back of a station wagon into the 2 floors of the Bible school of the seminary, so they can try to keep up with laundry with 22 people. I don't know how you get more practical than that.
Yeah. Something that we all take for granted here: clean water and being able to wash our clothes frequently. Yeah. But yeah, that's really funny. One of the things that I find fascinating, you were mentioning social media and how it's really been that grassroots movement. As an entrepreneur and filmmaker and all that myself, one of the big fascinations I have with certain charities and mission work organizations like you guys are doing right now is frankly the efficiency. Like the way that you and others that I've been able to talk to that are on the ground, the lengths that they go to make every dollar, to stretch every dollar to the farthest extent possible, as well as magnifying every bit of time that they have and every connection that they have to do as much good as they can. That's been really amazing. And that's one of the main reasons why I was fascinated by the stories you're posting online, is because it just seems that these are literally everyday normal people, not people with absurd amounts of money, but they're making the most of what they have. And to me, that is much more in line, or an even more beautiful manifestation of what the gospel is in some ways is everyday people and not hierarchies and large billion-dollar organizations, although of course those things do have their place, but it's a grassroots movement of fellowship and believers.
You know, we're 36 days into the war, and they were already doing this before the war. So they were already, I mean, everybody knew it was coming, right? And so, you know, the absence of overhead in these grassroots organizations like what we're doing is the fact that it's just our life and it's just our relationship. So it's my life and relationship with folks in Germany, and then the people who are giving tend to be very connected to me across the years, and they trust me that, you know, there's no skimming going on. It's just 100%. We're just trying to get it there. And then it's the set of relationships on that side in Eastern Europe, you know, from Germany to Poland to the Ukraine. And so it's real life. It's just people that already know one another. And the people who are giving support through my organization, you know, it's my set of relationships. Then I'm giving it to people that these supporters, they don't know the German side, but they know me. So then I'm the link to Germany. And then on the German side, I don't know the Ukrainian side, but the Germans do. So it takes somebody, you know, over here that's 1, 2, 3, 4. And because it's all grassroots, because we're not trying to build a building, we're not trying to pay somebody's salary, we're all just volunteers in it, you know? So, you know, the organization that employs me simply has given me the margin in my work life to say, yeah, we want you to be doing that. Do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In
And
a
I
way, that's
remember,
amazing that the trust goes so deep that they are not even aware of how a lot of it works, but you trust your fellowship so deeply that you're able to just go all in and commit and see
well,
amazing things.
when it's a lifetime of relationships, you know, yeah, yeah. And when you can operate from trust, life gets really good, even in the midst of darkness. And this is as, you know, in modern day, this is about as dark and ugly as life gets. And yet, let's never forget that the light shines the brightest in the darkness. And I know that sounds like a cliche, but it's just true. The pictures of the food out on the tables in the churches in the Ukraine, so that as people are coming through, or there are people sleeping, you've got some of the videos that show people sleeping, and or the churches where they're worshiping and their hands are in the air and they're so excited to be together. Yeah, they're excited to be together because they're alive and they're being cared for and welcomed and fed. I mean,
Yeah,
that's beautiful stuff.
yeah,
That's
that is. I'm sorry.
that's the gospel.
That is the gospel. That despite the tanks and the missiles and just all of the horrible images that come out anymore of that region.
But isn't, you know, this stark moment for us maybe is the realization that the first century version of the tanks and everything were present throughout the gospels. You know, the mounted cavalrymen of the Romans were everywhere. The chariots were everywhere. The legions were everywhere. And the gospel took place in the midst of that.
Yeah, yeah, that's very true. And in many ways, the Jews and common folk of the day, it in many aspects had even less options than we do today. You know, fortunately, thank God, many are able to flee and leave to Poland or Germany. But you know, back then they didn't have trains. You didn't have social media where you could have people on all these different continents and all these dozens of states contributing. So I'm glad you brought that up, because that is a really stark reminder of what the first century Christians went through and how many endured that persecution. And for for those that ask themselves, which I mean, I know I've asked myself this plenty of times, but we all do, with all the pain that goes on in the world, because it seems like it never stops. You know, just 2 years ago, we had the pandemic, we had the lockdown. So many people suffered due to both the disease and also the economic ramifications of the lockdown and the excess starvation and the tens of millions of people that endured famine due to lockdowns. And now we have this war in Eastern Europe that for most people came out of the blue and really pretty much did. I mean, there were indications of it in December and January, but we were all hoping and praying that it wouldn't. But now it looks like that there's more trouble on the way with, I'm sure you're well aware, with how much crop comes out of Russia and Ukraine, and now all those yields have been disrupted for the spring season, and so we might have more troubles along the way. And I'm not trying to be negative. I just want to ask you, because you're a pastor, you've been answering this question for decades. When we ask ourselves, why is there pain in the world? Why is there so much hurt for, especially the innocent? It's very difficult to think of the children, especially in this circumstance. So, if someone were to ask you, if someone were to come to you, um, fleeing that environment, and were to basically beg of you, asking, what is the answer? Why is there all this pain? And is there any hope in all this? What would you say to someone that is
Mm.
enduring that?
Yeah, those are great questions, and they are perennial questions, right? I mean, you're talking about the center or the heart of the Hebrew scriptures. The book of Job asks the questions, right? And Job is a contemporary of Abram. So you're back to Genesis chapter 12, right? So we're talking about ancient, timeless, human, honest questions. And anyone that thinks that they have a simple answer to such things is only fooling themselves. Because anybody that hears a simple answer to a perennial question, they know. They know better. So I don't want to ever diminish or deny someone's real pain. My children and my grandchild are safe and well. So who am I to speak to someone who's lost family members to artillery shells? I don't want to be dismissive in any way. I want to be respectful of that. And I would say that part of the response is to be willing to sit in the pain with them. So if you read Job chapter 2, it ends with the friends who show up to sit with Job, and it's called sitting Shiva, Shiva. It's Hebrew for 7. For 7 days, they show up and they see the anguish of Job is so great that they sit with him in silence for 7 days. Something that goes on in Judaism to this day. When somebody has tremendous suffering, people come to sit Shiva. They don't offer any answers, you know. They probably show up with a casserole nowadays. That's about it, you know. And they just sit. And that would be the first reply I would give you is, number one, I don't take it lightly and I don't dismiss it. Number two, the answer is to enter into it with people. The pain and the suffering that people are enduring, that in different seasons of our life that we all have, the heart cries out, am I alone? Have I been abandoned? So to have somebody that will just come and sit with you, just to be there with you and not fix you and not tell you, oh, no, let's give you this answer as though that's going to solve this deep anguish in my soul. No, I don't believe that. I don't think it's what God does, and I don't think it's what he asks us to do. So, you know, I would say the folks that showed up at the Bible school, you know, what I, at the seminary in Germany, the people that I know there, the faculty members, the staff, I know what happened. You've got pictures of them being welcomed at the train station. You know, I know what happened and what they're experiencing. Yeah, that's it.
Yep.
Yeah, there it is.
Being there for others,
Absolutely.
doing the best we can, and just sitting with them.
And getting over our need to have the answer or to be the one to fix it. You know, come on. That's God's job, not ours.
I was just about to say,
he just asks us to show up.
Yes, I was just about to comment that ultimately it's it's not our job to fix stuff. Ultimately, it's about God and what He's going to do
Mm.
in our
I was
journey.
just in a conversation before this one, Luke, literally like before this one.
Really?
And somebody was asking me similar thing, and they said, but remember, Steve, they were kind of pushing back on me, and they said, now remember, Steve, we're in the change business. And I said, are we? Because I think biblically we're in the God's in the rescue business, and we're in the showing up business. God rescues, not us. God saves, not us. God redeems. God delivers. God does that. I don't have any confusion. I know me well enough to know I ain't him. You know, when I met my wife in college a million years ago, she had a poster on the wall that said, there are two foundation facts of the universe. Number one, there is a God. Number two, you are not him.
Yeah, I could say that for myself as well.
Yeah, I knew I'd found
Yeah.
the right woman.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's great. And that goes right back to what you were saying earlier about giving and praying, and that you didn't say fix because we can't fix, but we can give. We can give our time. I'm assuming when you say give, you're referring to both time and uh, financially,
Mm-hmm.
and then
And
also
prayers, to
in prayer.
render our prayers, to give our prayers. Yeah.
Yeah.
And to be consistent in that, you know.
Yeah.
I'm just looking up above my screen where I have my little globe, my retro vintage globe up here. And I have it turned to the Ukraine. I mean, I have it turned to that Eastern European side of the world because it's a reminder to me. It's a reminder to me. Pray, pray, pray.
Yeah. Well, I will definitely be praying for the situation, and I hope that we all do.
Mm.
What are some practical steps? Like where can people send money if they want to directly support what you and your network of individuals are doing to get
Yeah.
people out of the situation? What can people do?
Well, thanks. Yeah, happy to provide that. You can give online at ascent.church/Ukraine-support. So that's a mouthful. So maybe you'll find a way to get it on there. But you can give online, ascent, ASCENT.church/Ukraine-support. And you can give online that way. Or you can be old-fashioned and actually write and mail a check.
Wow, really? We can still do that?
Believe it or not,
Yeah.
the majority of the support I've received so far, and it has been overwhelming to me. We had no idea what God would do and His people would do in this situation. But that can be sent. Checks can be made out to Colorado Conference Church of God. Mark in the memo Ukraine, and then mail it to 4870 Flintridge Drive, Colorado Springs, Colorado 80918. I have that address memorized.
Yes, I'm sure you've given that out to a lot of people over the
Well, and on
last 36 days.
my daily posts, it's all in there. It's all in there.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if somebody's listening to this and they say, well, we want to look at that, feel free to look me up on Facebook, Steve Rennick, Rennick, and you'll see a long string of these posts and pictures and details.
Yeah.
Feel free to message me.
Yeah, that's exactly what I did, and that's how we got to this spot. So before we go, Steve, I know you have another meeting you need to get to, but is there any other story or last thing that just has captivated you so much over the last month and a half that you just have to share it?
Well, sure. You know, the picture of these families, of these two moms and two dads showing up, you know, these two couples showing up with all these kids. I mean, that if that doesn't touch you, you can't be touched. But last week, my counterpart, the director of global relations for the Church of God in Germany, her name is Zana. You know, she texted, or she Facebook messaged me last Thursday from the outskirts of Kiev, Ukraine, where they were offloading supplies and getting ready to reload the vehicles with people to drive back west. And you know, I just couldn't believe I'm sitting here in Colorado Springs where like my biggest problem is the fact that it's snowing. You know, on spring break, it's snowing. That's my big problem in life. And she's offloading medicine and food in the outskirts on the western side of Kyiv, where on the eastern side, they're fighting for control. That just, you know, helps put me back in my place.
Yeah.
Yep. And reinforces for me, I want to help these people help everyone.
Yeah. Well, I love that phrase, and I'm going to be saying that
Please
more
help
often.
us help everyone.
Wonderful. Well, thank you, Steve, for your time.
Appreciate you, Luke. Thanks for
Yep.
the opportunity.